Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my AEW Dynamite review for August 18th, 2021. We're coming off the heels of a very successful inaugural edition of Rampage this past Friday night. I've not watched it yet, the whole thing at least. I've seen highlights of it, I've read the full result, and it sounds like it was a good old time had by all. Christian Cage, of course, becoming the new Impact Champion in that opening matchup there. I'm kind of surprised that that happened and that Omega didn't drop the Mega Championship to Andrade that same weekend, but the booking works in mysterious ways, I guess. So still no plans right now for me to review Rampage at the moment, but this is also not an invitation for anyone to email me asking if they can do it for me, because I will not consider it. I'm sorry. But with all the positive feedback and the great ratings the last episode got, that means there's a lot of momentum riding into this Friday's episode taking place in Chicago, which of course is a very big deal. A certain someone may or may not debut that night. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but let's talk about this week's episode of Dynamite. Like what you like, don't be a dick. Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston make their way to the ring, presumably to cut a promo, but they are jumped midway through by Daniel Garcia and 2.0. Matt Lee on the mic calling out Sting and Darby Allin for their Tornado Tag match to happen right now. So we get that, Sting and Darbs versus 2.0. They make a big deal of the fact that Sting's first match on TNT in 20 years, since the very last episode of Nitro when he fought Ric Flair. It is a big deal. They put out a press release for it and everything, and so I think it's cool that kind of Sting comes full circle with this one. Looks to be in great shape here as well. It's a no DQ match. They really explore the space with this one. They fight in the crowd and up to this one like a little lobby where they throw Darby into the wall, and a lot of fighting goes on there. Back down the ramp, 2.0 suplex Darby onto the wheel side of his skateboard on the ramp. That looked pretty gnarly to take. Double powerbomb to Sting through a table, but he stings up. He no-sells it, the Sting of old, and so the look on 2.0's face when that happens is pretty priceless. The Sting comes back, Darby comes back as well. Double Scorpion Death Drop, double Scorpion Death Lock onto 2.0. He makes him tap out in that. Oh, we've never seen this spot before. Well, they've never seen Natalya do it first. It was a really fun opener. I think that 2.0 were perfect foils for Sting and Darby here. They're certainly not going to be hurting from this loss. I think the last 2 weeks have really helped legitimize them, and it's just a great rebound from after having been released by NXT to come here to AEW and immediately make an impact, and they put him right in this feud with Sting and Darby. I think it's really well done stuff. And yes, Sting showing up and looking pretty good here in that match. We get a recap of Sammy Guevara proposing to his girlfriend Pam earlier in the night, and then we go see Tully Blanchard and Shawn Spears cutting a promo in response, kind of making fun of it, and they also have Shawn saying, hey Pam, I can get you a spot in the Pinnacle, and I also want to make the sex with you maybe. And so we go to that match now as Shawn Spears takes on Sammy Guevara. The hometown boy gets a big reception there in Houston. Spears jumping him during the entrance before the match begins. Tully Blanchard early on helps out with like a spike pile driver. He goes for it again, but the referee catches him and he gets ejected. And we kept back to Pam periodically in the crowd cheering on her fiance here, and Shawn will occasionally make gestures and kind of like, motion to her that he wants to, you're hitting on her and all this. Very Rick Rude kind of stuff. They're all over the place in this match. At one point we get this double kind of springboard to the top rope and they lock eyes and then they kiss. Just kidding. Sammy hits a cutter off the top rope. Shawn hits an avalanche Death Valley driver, but that does not get the job done. A couple minutes later, Sammy with a Death Valley driver of his own on this barricade bridge they had made earlier in the matchup. The 630 is hit, but Shawn still kicks out. Sammy hits a few knees to the face of Shawn, busts him open in the process, and then hits the GTH to win. Sammy embracing his fiance in the crowd while he's covered in Shawn's blood. That's love right there, but it was a great match. Backstage, the new Impact Champion Christian Cage about to be interviewed, but then you've got Don Callis showing up and just talking a lot at Christian, trying to get in his head basically, putting him down with very backhanded compliments. Christian has no time for that. Cage says that he's already proven he can beat Kenny Omega and he'll do it again at All Out. And he reiterates that Don Callis is a carny piece of shit. More on that story later. We then get a recap of Dante Martin's big breakout performance last week on Dynamite, and he says, he basically ain't seen nothing yet from him. It's Dan Lambert time. The segment that was originally scheduled to happen last week is now happening this week, and he didn't come alone. He shows up with Junior Dos Santos and Andre Arlovsky, and he's got something on his mind. He says that AEW is cancel culture, millennial snowflakes, just typical, like boomer Twitter rant bullshit over here, just riling up the fans like he does. More of the same stuff he did, last time he was on TV, calling the wrestling fans nerds and in their mom's basement and everything. Every anti-wrestling fan trope you can possibly think of, he just got hurled in that single promo. Lance Archer shows up to do some damage, but then he gets beat up by Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And that's pretty much where it ends. Lambert just kind of like points and laughs at Archer as he's selling there, and then so do the Men of the Year. And there you go. I think Lambert's a great talker. I think he's certainly a terrific heel. I think that his promo, he knows how to rile the fans up. He is just completely unflappable. You didn't hear him stutter or kind of like show any nerves in what he was doing here. So he's a great talker here. But for whatever reason, I'm just not digging this gimmick, because right now I'm not that interested in what Lance Archer's doing, and I'm kind of like not really interested in what the Men of the Year are doing right now. I feel they're kind of like all three men kind of spinning their wheels, and I guess this is the angle that's going to help kind of keep them busy. Hopefully it'll turn me around on it, but right now I just don't really care that much about this angle. Chris Jericho with a promo backstage saying that all the labors he's been through for the last 4 weeks will have been worth it once he gets MJF in the ring. He says he has the upper hand because he has the momentum on his side. He's going to beat MJF's bitchy ass in that ring later tonight. On we go to the AEW tag title match as the Jurassic Express challenge the Young Bucks. This is just a great match. I mean, I think all four of these guys really pull it off well. The Young Bucks just help elevate Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus so much in this thing. Some great innovation with their offense. There's a crazy ass superplex off Luchasaurus' shoulders. At what point does Jungle Boy hit it? They barely pull it off. Brandon Cutler tries to distract Luchasaurus with a flare, very Jurassic Park style, but it does not happen. Jungle Boy kicks out of the Indie Taker, which is very impressive. Then in comes Kenny Omega with a chick magnet shirt. Foreshadowing much again as he comes out there with his golden chair. Christian Cage shows up and he spears Omega. The chair almost backfires on the Elite Shades of Friday Night, but the Bucks are able to kind of still withstand. At this point, the Jurassic Express is fighting the entire Elite on their own. Finally, the Bucks catch Jungle Boy, hit him with the BTE trigger to win and retain. I think it was a great match. And like I said, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus looked like damn heroes in that match. But we're not done yet, because Christian gets beaten up, put back in the ring, and the Elite all beat him up. And then you've got, as well as Jurassic Express, One Winged Angel to Christian, the symbolic 3 count, as Omega and the rest of the Elite stand tall. Even the Good Brothers. You know what? They definitely won me over with how they have built this angle in such a short amount of time. Because I was kind of going, well, man, like to switch from Page to Christian Cage on such short notice seems like they have to do a lot of catch-up, a lot of make up for lost time. I think they've already done it in a pretty astounding way, just from like Rampage on. They've really helped build my interest and my investment in seeing this match. So good job with the quick turnaround. Tony Schiavone interviews Dr. Britt Baker backstage, and Britt introduces her new muscle, Jamie Hayter, who reappeared this past Friday on Rampage after the title match that Britt was in. Jamie introduces herself and says she and Britt go way back. She challenges Red Velvet to a match next week. And then we also see a Matt Hardy, Orange Cassidy package to recap their feud as of late, and that's going to bleed into their match next week on Dynamite as well. Then we see Tony Schiavone in the ring. Boy, he's all over the place in this episode. He brings Paul White to the ring to interview him. The former Big Show says how good it felt to be back in the ring last week and chokeslam Aaron Solo. He has a big announcement he's teasing, but then he's cut off by QT Marshall and the Factory. And he points out basically, Tony Khan didn't hire you. There's a reason he hired you as an announcer and not as a wrestler. And Big Show's like, what do you mean by that? And so then QT pulls up these x-rays that show that Paul White has had 3 different hip replacement surgeries at least for the implant in there, and he also shows this big scar in his hip and everything. Oh yeah, he's beaten down. You can't live the life you used to, and that's why you can't hang anymore. And Paul White gets offended by that and says, it's like he's not going to let the surgery stop him from doing what he wants. Then he announces he has a match at All Out next month, and it's going to be against QT Marshall. And the face QT makes is quite a looker, quite a look that he has there. Very big shocked reaction. So, I mean, it's okay. QT Marshall and Paul White, that'll be a spectacle. It'll just be, QT, even on a bad hip, I'm sure, there's a lot QT can do just bouncing off Paul White for a while. And there'll be enough gaga to go with that to kind of keep Show healthy and moving around and stuff. I'm sorry, Show, his format, his slave name, he would have used to say. But anyway, Paul White, back on pay-per-view, seems kind of sudden. Just felt like he was kind of like, bam, it's like maybe there's more on Dark Elevation that I'm missing in terms of the build. But it's like the 1 week last week, and then he's here, he's got a match. So, it's exciting to see. We'll see how it goes, I guess. We get a little promo from Jade Cargill and Smart Mark Sterling where they accept Kiera Hogan's challenge for a match on Rampage. Then we're backstage with the Elite where Tony Schiavone breaks the news to them that there's going to be a tag team eliminator tournament between 4 teams, and the winning team will face the Young Bucks for the titles at All Out in a steel cage. The Elite is very upset about that. And then we go to the ring where Taz and Hook introduce the FTW champion Ricky Starks. And Ricky comes out to the stage, he calls out Brian Cage, we cut to the back, and then we see Powerhouse Hobbs standing over Cage for like 2 seconds before Cage gets back up, starts fighting Hobbs, and then Ricky's like, no, cut the feed, we can't show you that, and then he runs the back. And that was that. Like, I don't know why every segment I see with Team Taz right now is just the quickest, most random, like, hey, here's some people. Oh, then this thing happens and it just evaporates in your face. Like, this was just so over and done with that it might as well not have been on the show. It feels like something they would have done during the commercial break to keep the fans invested. Because this just it was just so over and done with, and I don't know. I felt that for an angle like this, they'd give it a little more time than like what felt maybe 60 seconds or 90 at most. Backstage, the Death Triangle, Pac talks about his possible upcoming match with Andrade, and he says how appropriate it would be to fight Andrade in the same building where he beat Kenny Omega on 2 weeks' notice. Then we see Andrade and Chavo Guerrero and the unnamed third man in their group show up, and Andrade says, in order for the match to happen, you have to meet my demands. And then the silent third man gives this giant mountain of papers, Andrade's comically large list of demands that Pac apparently has to meet in order for this match to happen. I want to see a bit where Pac just goes through it page by page. He's looking over with this lawyer who's just like, shaking his head. Like, what is this? Then we go to women's action next as Penelope Ford takes on Thunder Rosa, who gets a massive ovation in her new adopted home state of Texas. And she has the Texas-inspired gimmick and everything. It looks very cool here. And speaking of a look, very interesting look for Penelope here. Apparently she lost her luggage or lost her gear bag from the airlines, which is something that I learned. Almost a very costly mistake in Dallas. So I feel you, Penelope. But she had to wrestle in her civvies, basically. I think she pulled it off well, especially on kind of a short notice thing. I think this was a good match. These two really, went at it for each other. A couple of times where Penelope tries to get the Muda lock put in, but Thunder keeps fighting out of it. The second time, she's able to counter into a submission of her own and makes Penelope tap. But yeah, this is a pretty solid match. The crowd was hot for it the entire time. And again, good job by Penelope to kind of recover and be able to wrestle a very good match while not in your gear. We're backstage with Arn and Brock Anderson, where Arn is talking about what Malachi Black has done to he and Cody in the last several weeks. He finds out that his son Brock has a match next week with Malachi on Dynamite. He pleads to the son not to do this because he thinks he's going to get hurt, but Brock basically says, I'm going to do this and you can't tell me not to. So that should be interesting. I'm very curious to see how much longer Malachi Black will torture the Rhodes family and all those they hold dear. We hear from Miro where he says he cannot forgive Fuego del Sol for getting his AEW contract the easy way, by which he means, Miro beat Fuego and Fuego still got the contract at the end of the night, and, very emotional, feel-good moment and whatnot. And then Miro says he has some more people he wants to look out and target. He name drops Eddie Kingston, which, Miro versus Kingston, that would be a good match for sure. And then we see Jon Moxley backstage. His promo is a mile a minute as he runs down just about everyone within earshot for his promo here. Talks about how he carried the company on his back last year during those uncertain times. He then pivots to Daniel Garcia and asks him, is this really what you want? It's a very intense promo from Jon Moxley. He sounds very on the border of unhinged here. Looks very tired. Being a new dad can do that to you. In your main event, it's the 5th and final labor of Jericho as Chris Jericho takes on MJF, the long-awaited rematch here. And the big stipulations are Jericho can't use the Judas effect and he can't come out to the song Judas. But that's not a problem because the AEW crowd actually pulls off a good a cappella version of Judas. I don't know how they did it. I thought it was going to collapse and be a big clusterfuck, but they did it. They pulled it off. The pyro timed to the crowd singing, which I think is amazing. I've never seen in my life a wrestling entrance where the music aspect was done fully a cappella like that. That has to be a first in wrestling, or at least the first I could possibly think of. That was pretty cool to see. Jericho starts off hot, and the crowd is into everything they are doing. At one point early on, MJF steals Jericho's gimmick of commandeering the camera and flipping off the crowd. Then the camera, the kind of shades of WrestleMania 15 here, where, MJF pivots and Jericho's right there. He punches the lens, then he looks into the camera from like down below looking up because MJF's still holding it, and then Jericho flips the camera off, which I thought was pretty funny. MJF working Jericho's arm pretty aggressively. That's the story here. He rips off Jericho's arm brace and puts him in the salt of the earth armbar more than one occasion. Hits him with the heat seeker, but Jericho is able to kick out. MJF with Dick Kick City and his own version of Walls of Jericho, but there's a rope break. Jericho hits MJF with Floyd the Bat while the referee is distracted, goes for the Judas effect, but he stops himself, but that is his undoing because MJF hits his own Judas effect on Jericho, puts the armbar back in, they fight for a bit, and Jericho then taps out. What a shocker. MJF wins clean as a sheet, and he conquers Jericho 3-0 against Chris Jericho in the last year. And that's very, very interesting that Jericho's given that much of a rub to MJF. I'm really curious to see where Jericho goes from this, see where MJF goes from this, who either of these guys will face off next. I think whatever MJF does All Out, it better be big to capitalize on something like this. I think that it was a good match as well. Started off at one point, there was kind of an awkward moment early on when there was kind of a spot where coming off the ropes. But after that, everything else felt great. It was a very entertaining matchup. And yeah, the finish was definitely surprising. My grade for this week's Dynamite is a B+. Pretty entertaining show this week. I think it started strong with the Sting and Darby match against 2.0. Ended strong with Jericho MJF. And I think the Sammy Guevara, Shawn Spears, and the tag title matches were also very good. Only a couple things in this show this week that I'm not really feeling right now. The stuff with Dan Lambert and Lance Archer, and then the whole thing with Team Taz. Every week it just makes you go like, what are they doing with this? It just feels there's always some kind of like lack of, some missing element, some missing piece going on that I think that makes it a little kind of a head scratcher when I watch those. But besides that, I think it was still a lot of good momentum carrying them onto future shows, and I hope they can keep this momentum going into All Out, which is still a few weeks away. But what did you think of Dynamite this week, folks? Where do you think MJF and Jericho go after the 5 labors have wrapped up? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.